Дамы и господа, сегодня наша зеленая гостиная выходит не из своего обычного места, потому что сегодня у нас в гостях потрясающий гость, уникальная женщина Лилиан Хоххаузер. Она работает с Большим театром, мы сейчас посчитали, 52 года, но хотела бы и раньше, просто так жизнь как-то не складывалась, потому что пока Сталин был жив, им не разрешали работать с нашими коллективами. И Лилиан приехала сейчас сюда и смотрит здесь нашу премьеру на новой сцене. Мы выходим поэтому из вот такого необычного для нас помещения. Но я счастлива, что вообще смогла заловить и заманить к нам Лилиан Хоххаузер. Это абсолютно легендарное имя. In 2 words, I said that I'm so pleased that Lilian Hochhauser could come to our sort of green room, that you work with Bolshoi at least for 52 years and you wanted to do it before, but obstacles didn't permit you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes, and I said that you're an amazing woman and how I'm pleased that I could... I said it to them, it's true, because I also was telling to the people around that apart from being one of the greatest impresario, you have so many children, grandchildren and grandchildren that I think that when you all are together, it's like more than 50, I don't know.
I think at least.
Did you ever count?
No, you know, I've given up counting because every time I count another one comes.
So you met Victor when you was a very young girl, right? Victor Hochhauser is your legendary husband. And
my legendary husband, yes. I was, of course, very young indeed. I was 23. I mean, that's pretty young. Of course, I was very excited to meet him because he had just started arranging concerts, but big concerts, you know. With Yehudi Menuhin and with Ida Handel and such people.
Because I understood that Victor worked in some society, and I was wondering if they focused on certain, I don't know, like maybe Jewish concerts or something like this, or maybe not exactly.
What happened was that there was a very eminent rabbi, a very charismatic man, who actually saved a lot of the children in the Second World War, managed to get a lot of the Jewish children out of Germany. And he was then raising money for them, and raising money all the time. He was actually irresistible, could persuade anybody to do anything. And he persuaded Victor, when he was about 22, I suppose, 23, something of that sort, to put on a concert in aid of his charities, you see. It was called Music for Charity Society. And in fact, it was Ida Handel, she was a little girl at the time, I mean, really literally 15 or something. It was one of her first concerts ever. And he started to arrange these charity concerts, and they were very successful, so he decided, well, good idea, you see. He carried on with it. And that's where I came in on the scene, and I thought it was even a better idea. I thought I'd better marry this man, you know, because it's exactly what I would like to do as well. Anyway, we did get married, and we've worked together ever since in 1949.
And this company, Victor and Lilian Hochhauser, was it formed at 1949 as a separate?
Well, it's always been known, to tell you the truth, as Victor Hochhauser. You see, that's why many people think I sit at home knitting or something, you know. But nevertheless, I've always worked from the beginning with Victor, and done many things, of course, on my own, you know, not together. And also we were quickly involved in ballet, as a matter of fact.
Really?
Right.
Even
from the beginning,
so
not of course Russian ballet, because we didn't begin to work with Russian artists until 1953.
But you tried before, or you didn't?
No, we didn't actually. It was so impossible before Stalin died, that it was so impossible that nobody even thought of it.
Because I knew that some of your family comes from Russia. So
yes, my mother was from the Ukraine, and my father was the sort of Polish Ukraine and that area. But they came when a lot of the Jewish people had to leave because of terrible anti-Semitism in that area. And that was in 1900. So, well, of course, we knew about some of the Russian artists, particularly David Oistrakh.
How come you even knew? I don't understand.
Well, I'll tell you,
because both
Victor and I were very much into music, although we weren't working in music. We went to concerts, we read, and Oistrakh had been, in 1937, had won the Queen Elizabeth competition in Belgium. Or he nearly won it, actually, because, as you know, Ginette Neveu won it, but joint prize. And it was from that time that we thought about Russian artists. We thought about them, but did nothing, couldn't do anything. But we did have quite a lot of good artists in England. Mm-hmm. We had quite a good ballet company, and some good ballet dancers as well.
Yeah, based on what came from Diaghilev heritage, sort of, or not?
Well, some of them were. We worked, for instance, with Massine. I mean, Massine actually danced for us, you know. And,
yeah?
Yes, Freddie Franklin and very many other people who worked with the Ballet Russe, you see. Mm-hmm. Markova, for instance, Alicia Markova. And her partner whose name was Anton Dolin. We presented them, and we put them on in fact, it was the first ballet for the masses, as it were. We put on these wonderful one-act ballets. They were very successful.
On which space was it shown?
Well, the place that it was on, actually, there was nowhere to put anything on. This was soon after the war. Mm-hmm. And the place we put it on was a hall which doesn't exist anymore. It burned down.
Because I remember you said to me that Covent Garden was also converted. Yeah. It was not like a place to do.
Covent Garden was absolutely turned into a dance hall, you know. I don't know if you know that. It turned into a, you know, tangos and so on, you know.
Ball dancing.
Ballroom dancing, yes.
Not a proper stage, not a proper theatre.
And there was nothing there. The only thing that existed for opera and the new, it was then the Royal Ballet was just beginning with Ninette de Valois. Mm-hmm. That was at Sadler's Wells.
Right.
There was no Covent Garden did not exist, and then until the 50s, the end of the 40s, 50s, it was reclaimed as an opera house, and that's when everything began at the Royal Opera House, you see.
And so how you dared to contact Russia? I mean, you sitting there in England, Russia is closed country, to whom you're supposed to write?
How did we contact Russia?
Embassy,
really, in a way, Russia brought themselves to England, because there was just at that time, in 1953, mm-hmm. as I say, after Stalin died, there was a delegation of musicians, and we were very excited about this, and we saw the name Oistrakh, but it was Igor Oistrakh. Igor, David's son, who was 21 at the time, and he was part of a group of people that included Bela Davidovich and various other young at the time, of course, very young musicians, and we were very excited. So we got in touch with this society. It was a sort of society that worked with the Russians in some way. Not quite remember who they were, but anyway, we got in touch with them, and we got permission to get Igor to play, because I go back a little bit, what we were really doing at that time was organising classical music concerts with the only hall that was in London, which was the Royal Albert Hall. And we put on these very popular concerts week after week, and with very good artists, you know. And so we changed one of them, and we asked Igor, and we got permission to put Igor on. That was in 1953, and that was the start. Oh. That was actually the start. And David came in 1954, and then came those fantastic artists. Gilels Rostropovich came in 56.
But that was not on your invitation, or it was on your invitation?
Yes, yes.
It was already on your invitation?
For 25 years we brought all the Russian artists.
But when you met Igor Oyster, apart from the name of Oyster, have you heard already about other Russian musicians?
Not a lot, really. Not a lot. Oistrakh was the first name that we knew. But it grew very, very quickly. Because Oistrakh said there's this cellist who's phenomenal, and then Richter, who was...
Yes, how come Richter? Because he became such a friend of your family, but how for the first time you got knowledge of his name, of this kind of pianist?
Richter was a legend before he began. Richter came to England for the first time in 1961. He went abroad for the first time in 1960 to America, and 61 he came to England. We arranged about 6 concerts at the Royal Albert Hall, which
he came under your invitation.
Oh yes. We invited him to come. And I mean, everybody said that he was unique, and of course he was the greatest. He was absolutely incredible. Was greatest. And
but you didn't know him in person at that time,
no,
right?
Not
you just
at
had to go to Ghost concert.
Not at all. We were very young. I mean, you can imagine. When I think back, I don't know how we had the cheek to ask all these great people to come. Anyway, we did. So there you are. And I, of course, immediately fell in love with Richter. And, yeah, absolutely. And then Gilels, of course, who was a very great artist. The Leningrad Philharmonic, Mravinsky, who was one of the legendary conductors. Then Gennady Rozhdestvensky and the Borodin Quartet.
You just named
Shostakovich. And Shostakovich, of course, was our guest on 5 occasions. He came to England as our guest, and when we had I actually put on a season of Russian and Soviet music, as it was known, with about 40 concerts up and down the country, where some of the greatest names came here.
What time period was it?
Well, there was first of all Shostakovich, and then Svetlanov and Rozhdestvensky, and many soloists came. We used a lot of British orchestras, put on Russian music and with all the Russian soloists and conductors. That was in the 60s.
But do you remember how you first met Richter? You came to the airport to meet him?
Airport? Richter never went in an aeroplane.
At this time as well?
No. Once I think he flew to America, and he said never again. That's why he never went. He went to America twice, I think.
So he came by boat? Or how?
Yes. No, he came. I had to go to. Where did I go? I can't remember the port. Anyway, I had to go to the port to meet him. And he came with Nina Dorliak.
Yes.
And, well, I was just nervous, of course, very nervous. And, but he just came, and that was all. It needed only for him to come, and 3 or 4 concerts at the Royal Albert Hall, which takes 5,000 people. Completely sold out in a day.
Right away, because he's such a legendary name.
Right away.
Because they haven't heard him yet.
It was just at the time when Nureyev one had to come to England. Who knew who he was? He was only 24. But somehow there is something about genius that gets through to people, and they know it, and they feel it. It's very interesting that these are the 2 people who, their fame, don't know how it came, but it came before them.
When you look back on this huge time period and all these artists, will you name these 2 people as the most? I don't know. It's difficult to say. You don't need to choose, of course. But then dear to your heart, maybe.
In their own field, each one of them was unique, and together to have such a group of artists and musicians, it can never happen again. Never. Not only because they really don't exist like that. I really feel they don't exist. I mean, of course we've got the great Barenboim, and we've got other, he's a very great artist, of course, and great other artists, but you will not find a group of people like the ones I've mentioned.
I read in one of the articles, you said that no one nowadays is great, and there used to be, maybe apart from Barenboim. What makes them so great? What is it?
Well, I've tried so many times to explain it to myself and discussed it so many times. There was an intelligentsia in Moscow, and they couldn't get out, and somehow it didn't feed on each other. I don't know how it happened that there were so many, more than brilliant. The word is really, they were more than brilliant. You know, they had great personalities as well. You know, they were just marvelous people, and Victor and I, we were very, very lucky to have known them all and to have been there at the right time, I must say, when they were all at their peak.
Was Richter a difficult man? Because I saw one picture, he stays with you on the balcony raising hands like this. And this really shows how he liked you.
Richter
I always thought he was
terribly
like a reserved man.
Richter cancelled more than he played. I mean, can you imagine? I remember one Sunday, I mean, he cancelled half his concerts. He wasn't well or something. Look, you forgave him everything because he was Richter. But it was difficult. It was very, very difficult, as you can imagine. One concert that we organised for him at the Royal Festival Hall, he was an afternoon concert, I remember clearly, and naturally solo, no question, it was him solo. But 2 hours before the concert, I got a phone call from Nina, Lilian, and when I heard that voice I knew there was trouble. Lilian, is drunk. He's ill.
This is beginning.
Oh my goodness. 2 hours before the people were to turn up. So what did I do? I quickly made some posters. I quickly got hold, it was a holiday actually, it was a bank holiday, English bank holiday. I got hold of the director of the Royal Festival Hall who was on holiday, and we fixed up another time at 11 o'clock at night on another day, a week later or something, and I made these posters to say, you could have your money back, or you can come at 11 o'clock, whatever date it was. And not one ticket came back, not one. He played. And he played. But he was difficult. And he didn't speak on the telephone. You know, he wouldn't fly and he wouldn't speak on the telephone.
So your communication could be only direct like this.
Yes, I had to go. I went to. That's why I've been all around the world to islands, little islands on Lake Como to find out what he wants to do. And of course, he always used to say, you tried to ask him for a program in advance. And he would say, how do I know what I feel like playing 6 months from now? So you got the program a month in advance. But it was all right. People would listen to everything he played. Wow. That was quite unique.
And when was your first trip to Russia? When did you dare to come yourself to the country?
Well, we came first time in, I think it must have been 1956. Yeah. 56, 50, and 57. That
57 was this big festival of youth in Moscow. I don't know.
No. Well, we were youth then. It's true, but I don't remember going to that. But in 57, we brought. I don't know if you remember. There was a Ukrainian dance company called Viersky. Viersky's Ukrainian dance company, because at the time, anything Russian was of such interest.
Yes.
Or anything, everything and anything. We brought you know, with the Gopak and the this and the that, you know, and it was a huge show which we put on for weeks.
So you came in Moscow, in Kiev, in Leningrad at that time?
No, everything really was working through Goskoncert. Everything was working through the Ministry of Culture and Goskoncert. I mean, it was a very strange land, you know, and negotiations used to take weeks and weeks. Sometimes we were here for 4 weeks.
Just
negotiating with Goskoncert, yes.
Wow. coming every day, talking to people?
No, not every day. Some days they didn't. They
Want
didn't
to see
yes,
you?
no.
You had to, and you had to hire some translators, or Victor spoke Russian, or how you did communicate?
Well, it so happens that Victor. No, we had of course, we had a translator. Victor quickly picked up Russian. I picked up. My Russian wasn't bad, but a lot I forgot it in the meantime. But Victor, Russian was very good. He was born in Slovakia. He went to Slovak schools, and the language is pretty close. So he was able to pick up Russian quite quickly, and spoke very good. But I speak German quite well, and Oistrakh, for instance, spoke German, and so many of the, and so Richter was a German anyway, more or less, you know, and so I spoke, and I don't know, we became so close with all of them. I mean, there was Borin and Mushavitsky, you know, those wonderful artists, not only the ones that come to mind immediately. There were so many other marvellous artists who brought to London.
You first saw Bolshoi when Bolshoi came on tour in '56?
Well, Bolshoi came for the first time in 1956 because the government, the British government and the Soviet government, they did an exchange visit, and the ballet came in '56. We were kind of just starting to work with artists. Not many artists had come, and they had arranged this visit, and I went. Of course, I went, and it was marvelous. Ulanova was there. Princess Gal wasn't. She did come on when we brought them in '63. In the meantime, of course, we had great ideas immediately, and we started to negotiate soon afterwards for the 1963.
Through Goskoncert, or you came to Russia?
Through Goskoncert, everything went very. It was very strict, very strict, and we didn't know anybody. I mean, we really did.
I just wondered, there was no faxes as well. You call telephone, you write letters.
No, there was something called telex. Do you remember telex?
No.
No, you don't. There was a machine, and it used to have to. It was quite complicated. It's funny, but it got done. It's amazing.
It is amazing.
We used to bring at least 3 companies a year from Russia, and and for 25 years we had monopoly of all the Russian artists. Nobody brought any Russian artists to England.
Was just
I think people were afraid to. They thought, well, we were doing it. They weren't doing it, you know. And it was very successful, and everybody was happy, or sort of happy, you know. And we started to work with the British government as well on the cultural agreements which were made between the two countries. And then in 1966, we arranged for the BBC Symphony Orchestra to come to Moscow.
That was the first time you brought some English company to Russia?
It was the first time. It was the first time, and actually it was very interesting. It was very interesting because the 2 conductors who were at the time working with the orchestra was a very famous Englishman called Sir John Barbirolli and Pierre Boulez. So they thought that Pierre Boulez was Barbirolli's assistant. They didn't know what an avant-garde and what a dangerous person Boulez was. And so we came with this. First we went to Prague, then we went to Warsaw, and then we came to Moscow and Leningrad.
And you played in Philharmonic Hall in Leningrad and here in Conservatory?
Yes, yes, in Bolshoi and Leningrad in yes. And well, when we were on the train with the orchestra from Warsaw to Moscow, I got a phone call because Victor had gone on in advance. Victor phoned me and said, "There's problems here. We've got problems, you know, because they don't want to have. They've just realised here, the Ministry of Culture, that Boulez's music is subversive. It's new. You can't have. They didn't know who he was. You know that he was just so. He was very, very famous, of course. And so we got here, and they provided. And we got here, and there was a huge breakfast arranged at the National Hotel. Caviar and vodka and everything nice. And I remember there was a lady called Madame Petrova, and I don't know if she's still with us, and from the Ministry of Culture, and Madame Forsova wasn't there at the time, but anyway, whatever. But they sent a delegation to persuade us to ask Boulez to change the music of Boulez. So we had the head of the BBC with us, and he said, "Ladies and gentlemen, we're all going home." So he stood up and he said, "Well, we're all going home." And so it calmed down, and somehow we made a little kind of compromise, because one of the pieces was by Webern, for instance. And so we did an earlier opus number. They thought it must be maybe better than the later ones. And I remember all the people from the Ministry of Culture sat in the box on the side there. Very bad, but it was such a success. It was such a huge success.
Audience instantly.
Instantly. Do you know that it was the biggest success was in Moscow and Leningrad? I mean, we went to the other countries, but when Boulez, you know, Boulez conducted his work, a new work, and he had to repeat it again immediately. They would not let him go.
There was such a hunger also.
Absolutely, absolute hunger. And he's a great man. I did 8 tours with him.
His 90th anniversary this year.
He was 90 in March. So.
And when did you come inside Bolshoi building yourself? What year was it?
Bolshoi. Oh, that's
and
very exciting.
The word Bolshoi, just the word Bolshoi.
Well, the word Bolshoi was so like something in the heavens, you know. I mean, it was so far removed, and it was so grand and big, and you know, it really, really was terribly exciting, you know. And well, I suppose. It didn't take long, actually, but maybe 1960 or 59, you know, during these years. And when did I come to...
You saw Lavrovsky?
I can't remember.
You met Lavrovsky?
Oh, yes, of course. Oh, yes. Leonid Lavrovsky and his son as well.
Yes, he was dancer.
Yes. And we knew Alanova.
And you had to choose the program somehow, or they suggested the program?
Well, yes, I mean, we all knew we wanted Swan Lake, and we still do, as you know.
But you already know at that time that you want Swan Lake.
Yes, Swan Lake, and of course there was Lavrovsky's Romeo and Juliet, which was new. I think it was, the first performance was in...
I think something like 58 maybe.
It was Lavrovsky's, wasn't it?
It was Lavrovsky, of course.
Yes, that's right. And we did The Little Humpback Horse, and Cinderella. We had all this wonderful Prokofiev music. That was my one regret. I never met Prokofiev.
Yes, he passed away in '53.
On the same day the Stalin died.
Exactly.
Yeah, he died. And we had a very full program, really. And the names, I mean, we had Plisetskaya for the first time, Struchkova, and Timofeeva, and Kondratieva.
What was your biggest sort of cultural pleasure out of Bolshoi performances, or most memorable time? The curtain is open and here is Bolshoi. Was it Spartacus? Spartacus or some other title? I don't know.
One at the time. We didn't bring Spartacus on the first one.
Yes.
Oh no, because it hadn't been composed, of course.
But I mean, you saw so many Bolshoi productions and all these dancers. If you had any moment yourself, of course you're impresario, but as a spectator, to be really impressed with what is on stage.
You know, I think it was the Bolshoi. It was just the Bolshoi. Really, they could do anything. It was just having the Bolshoi, and it's still the same, you know. The Bolshoi still, it brings an excitement with them. that no other company does.
At a certain time of your life, you had some problems and you couldn't continue to work with Soviet Union. What was your harm? What did you do wrong?
Well, I haven't discovered that yet, but I must have done. Anyway, in 1975, they decided that we were persona non grata, the Ministry of Culture, and they stopped communicating.
So from 63 to 75.
Well, I'll tell you, Rostropovich, when Rostropovich left Russia, which was in 1974, or Soviet Union as it was, he came and he lived with us. He stayed with us, you know, and then Galina and the two girls who were little children at the time, and nearly a year he stayed in, we had an apartment near our office, and he stayed there and he stayed with us, and I think that they didn't like that, and obviously we wouldn't not look after Rostropovich no matter what happened, you know.
You were friends by that time?
Yes. And so, I don't know what else it was. We never ever discussed, but suddenly our name was wiped off. And for 12 years...
You were trying to write letters, same way you did in Gostkoncerts?
Well,
although you got something
they honoured, the last thing we did was in 1975, I brought here the London Philharmonic Orchestra.
Yeah.
I brought a lot of orchestras here. London Philharmonic Orchestra, and that was the very last thing, and then there was silence, no more, finished. And they never gave an excuse, and we didn't know why. We never found out why.
In between you worked, I know you don't work only with Russia, but what was the country you started to work
but
with?
I mean the country which had our whole emotions. I mean, everybody gets emotionally involved in Russia, you know, and we were no exception. And we were so, not only from the point of view of our work, but of course that was a great loss, and also the sadness about it. It was really sad. Richter never came back, you know, for 16 years until I started working again with the with Russia. After when Perestroika came in '91, I came back here immediately to get Richter to come back again.
And before this, you couldn't be granted also visa or permission to come?
No, he could come. No. I wouldn't. They wouldn't give me a visa.
That's what I'm saying.
The first thing I knew that there was a problem was in 1974. When did he die? When Oistrakh died, I wanted to come. I had to come to the funeral, and they wouldn't give me a visa.
So you couldn't come?
I couldn't come. Anyhow, whatever.
At 91 you came?
Pardon?
At 91, in Perestroika time.
I came back in 91, and of course I started to see what I could do with the Bolshoi. I don't remember who was in charge of the Bolshoi. That was before Vasiliev. And we didn't have any real connections with them. So it was difficult, but I had Richter in mind, you know, and I came here and I bring Richter back. But the point is, there were 16 years when we didn't work with it. What happened was, first of all, I started to work very much with China, and we brought some wonderful things from China. And also, Rudolf Nureyev. Finally, I could work with Rudolf Nureyev.
This is such a story when he was waiting for Kirov company to come. I love this story. When you came to the airport, and they supposed to come from France.
Yes, that's a great story.
Please
in 1961, when they came to the West for the first time, more or less, and we went to the airport. We were terribly young, you know. There was Sergeyev and Dudinskaya, and etc., etc., etc. And some wonderful artists, you know. And we went to the airport with flowers, and I remember there was, the man in charge, name was Corky. Very Corky. And we went there, long faces, miserable. We were so happy, you know, I mean, it was wonderful. But of course, Rudolf had jumped the barrier in Paris and defected. And they were terrified. They didn't know what, they were all going to be shot. I don't know, something. Anyway, whatever the case may be, we had to rearrange everything. And Nureyev then became a criminal and nobody could mention his name. I mean, you couldn't even say Nureyev, you couldn't say it. So that was that. But that, when we stopped working with them, we put on a festival every year for 12 years.
What was the first year of this festival?
The first year of this festival was in 1978.
And then for 12 years in a row?
Yes,
every year?
12, every year, sometimes 7 weeks, because we brought companies from all over the world to dance with. And Rudolf was very clever.
He was like artistic director of this event?
Well, he planned. He was in charge of, he was the artistic person in charge of it, you know. But I had to bring it into being.
Of course.
And since Rudolf was a very difficult man to work with, he would...
What was his difficulty? Oh, he was speaking on the phone, he was taking planes, he was...
I don't know, he was difficult. First of all, his English was terrible, and then he wouldn't, you know, I never knew what he was saying. I could never understand. And he never had any time to explain anything. He was usually practicing at the bar and telling you to do the most complicated things. And it was, I used to lose weight every year. I got half the size. Anyway, but it was wonderful. And we used to bring companies from America, and from Europe, and from all over.
And he would have danced with this.
And we did huge repertoire. And you know, I think there was one night out of all these years, and some of the seasons were 7 weeks long.
7 weeks long?
7 weeks.
Would you do it in
he danced every night,
or
sometimes twice a night, and he never cancelled. Once, only when he hurt his foot. Never cancelled.
One BT said to me that if Baryshnikov danced maybe 50-70 performances a year, and Nureyev danced 250.
No, Baryshnikov was of course fabulous, fantastic, and I love him, he's marvellous, but he didn't have the stamina of Rudolf. He couldn't.
But Rudolf had this constant hunger, I guess.
Pardon?
Rudolf had this like constant hunger to dance.
Absolute hunger. He would, if there's 3 ballets, he had to dance in 2 of them.
Because now we had this Marco Spada, and sometimes this choreography is very complicated, male choreography. And I asked Lacote, why do you have so many things to stage? And he said, but Rudolf always was saying to me, more.
I'm sure that's true. That's 100% true. Definitely. He had to dance. Because he got ill at the end, and then everything stopped. And so on, you know, and that's how life went by. And in the meantime, of course, we began again to work. And what I wanted to say is, when we stopped working with Russia, which was in '75, I think, nothing came for 12 years from Russia, because nobody knew where, what, how, what.
For 12 years, not a single person?
Nobody, nothing came from Russia. Because we didn't work with them and nobody knew where to begin, you see. So what happened was that there were a couple of people, I don't know if you ever came across them, I think maybe you did, but anyway, they were in the sports field and they somehow infiltrated and he did the impossible thing. He went bankrupt on bringing Bolshoi and Kirov.
Oh, really?
I mean, that's quite difficult, but he managed it.
When did you decide, because you're doing now often 1 year Mariinsky, 1 year Bolshoi, more or less.
Well,
when this decision came?
When did this start? Well, this started really, this started later every year. I mean, we bought, in those years that we bought quite a few times, but every year like that was when, basically, first of all in 2000, because that was when they rebuilt Covent Garden. Before then, every year Covent Garden had to repair. It was in such a terrible state before they rebuilt it that they couldn't let anybody in the summer. They had to repair the place all the time. And so we used to go, of course, to the Colosseum and the Colosseum. And there were a lot of difficulties in putting things on.
Also, Albert Hall, I remember once.
Yeah, and the festival. Oh no, that was in fact that was the Mariinsky, the Kirov, that we put on, and that's when Fortsova came. And you know, we were many problems during all this time. There were demonstrations and well, you know, people who wanted to demonstrate because Panov was being persecuted and this one was being persecuted.
And how Fortsova behaved with you? How Fortsova behaved with you?
Well, you know, Fortsov was a very interesting woman. She, certainly in relation to the other ministers, you know, she was a bit human, a little bit human, you know. The artists actually quite liked her in a way because she did try to help them, but she got very angry with us because she came to London. We had a season at the festival hall, and when Baryshnikov came and Makarova and so on, and also great artists, and Fortsova came, and there were lots of demonstrations outside, and she said, "Can't you do anything about this? Why don't you get the bit?" I said, "Well, you know, in England we don't control the police force, you know." But she couldn't understand that. She really thought that we could have done more to stop demonstrations. But we got on with her, actually. Actually, we got on with her. Well, I mean, in a certain way, we didn't have a great deal to do with her. She came to London about 3 times during this period, and you know how it is with the minister. You try and be nice to them, and she was a bit nicer, you know. But of course, one of our great honour, we hosted Shostakovich on 5 occasions. I mean, he came first of all. I believe I first met him when they put on Katerina Izmailova. Katerina Izmailova. It was a very poor production. It was a Czech production, actually. But the Covent Garden put on, and I sat.
He was invited for premiere?
He was invited to watch the rehearsals, you know, during the rehearsals, and I sat with him all the time. That was that first. And I remember I took him to see West Side Story.
Yeah?
Yes.
He enjoyed it? Oh, no.
He was very polite. He was very polite. And yes, it kind of, well, in many respects it's very good, of course, but it wasn't quite his cup of tea, I think.
I don't know if he knew Bernstein himself.
Maybe not. I don't know.
And what were the other 4 occasions when he was coming? What were the other occasions when Shostakovich came? You organized.
Well, other occasions, of course, he came to Ouvre. And I don't know if you know, I don't know if I told you, but we introduced Benjamin Britten to Shostakovich. Yes, yes. What happened was that we had brought to London at the time the Leningrad Philharmonic, as it was then, conducted as it happens by Gennady Brzezinski. There was, I think Mravinsky was there, but he conducted this particular concert when Rostropovich gave the first performance of Shostakovich's cello concerto in London. And I think we were giving the very first performance of the Fourth Symphony. We gave many first performances of his symphonies were presented. And Britain was there because the orchestra was actually performing their 4 C interludes of Benjamin Britten. So he came to here, and that's when he met Rostropovich, and he
introduced them.
Yes, in the box. We were all in the box. Can you imagine? In one box there was Benjamin Britten, Shostakovich, and Rostropovich.
I'm very envious. What a box! Amazing.
Yes, that's.
And then there was sort of friendship, I understand. And later on was sort of friendship between Britain and at least they had some
Britain and Rostropovich. They were just so close, and you know how much music Britain wrote for Rostropovich, an enormous amount of music, and.
But Shostakovich also was coming to...
Yeah, and Shostakovich used to go... Yes, Shostakovich went to Orbit twice.
Yes.
He went to Orbit twice, and he came to London. Then when we did this Days of Soviet and Russian Music, he was at the head, you know. There were other composers like Sviridov came and others, I can't remember at the moment. But Shostakovich was there. And that was, it was 5 visits. I can't remember the other one, but generally speaking, I saw quite a lot.
Have you ever chance to see Stravinsky?
I only met him. I didn't know him. I must tell you, Stravinsky, I didn't know him. I didn't know him. But some person, actually, funnily enough, the person who brought him to England was someone who worked with us for me for a few years, and then he went to work by himself, and he had the brilliant idea, which I didn't. Once Stravinsky slipped through my fingers.
Sometimes happens.
Yes.
You were bringing also Bolshoi opera, right?
Yes, we brought Bolshoi opera, brought Boris Godunov, we brought...
Even recently we went also with Boris Godunov and Onegin as well.
Yes, with Onegin.
Yes.
We brought the Fiery Angel.
You are from a poor Jewish family. You start to work
Yes.
when you were like 14-year-old. Where do you find all this foundation to bring it all?
It didn't happen in one day, you know. And
because I can't believe, when I look at our Boris, I can't imagine somebody can bring it somewhere.
It really, then I think about it and I find it extraordinary too. I have to work it out for myself. It's really quite extraordinary. And to think that, you know, we were very close because, of course, with the difficulties that the artists were working under and living under, you know, you gave them a lot of sympathy and help and so on. And you became very close to them as well. It wasn't just work, you know, as you can imagine. It wasn't just work. It was a life, a whole life. I mean, I belonged to the Bolshoi all my life nearly.
That's how we feel also.
I know, I'm a bit older, but still, you know.
You know, we just came here from this rehearsal of Figaro you're seeing here on
Yes.
our new stage, but you're going very often to see something. You always have this wish to see something new.
Yes, I do, I really do. I think life has to be enjoyed, and if you love people and you enjoy, you should take every advantage to
When you see some
experience it.
performance, watching some performance, do you always have this feeling that will be success, or that will not be success, that I can bring to England or Great Britain? Or this is the
Yes, I do have.
This is
I do have a feeling for what is good for England.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that doesn't necessarily mean that other countries have their own ideas about culture and dance and so on. I know what I like, and it's worked. You see, it has. You know, we've had some marvellous seasons. I think you will agree. I mean, they really have been very good, exciting.
What is the secret of Swan Lake? Why you said we started with Swan Lake and we still want Swan Lake?
We cannot do without, because why? Because first of all, it has wonderful music, no question about it. It has a very romantic story, and it is beautifully choreographed, and the choreography is wonderful. And what's more, there's always a new generation of people coming up who want to see this. I mean, you present something for 60 years, there's about 3 generations, new people coming in to see this thing. So these classics, these great classics, will always survive, always. I mean, you know, because but people want to go and see every interpretation of Odette, you know, and there's always discussion about how she does it and how she doesn't do it, and what's that, you know.
Lilian, I just want you to know that you're greatly admired in Bolshoi Theatre. Yes, you are our partner
And
for the whole female of
deserved,
Bolshoi also, and for everybody. And what you did for these countries, for their friendship,
really
I know it is
very
recognized by some sort of friendship medal, but it's not that. It's just really amazing, and I'm so happy that still under your invitation we will be coming to London in 1 year time, and you yourself is a legendary person.
Well, I don't
you know,
this
something like Bolshoi has this special sound. The name Hochhauser has a very
it's
special
very kind
sound.
of you to say so, and of course it's very nice.
I'm just very sad that from all this bunch of people you have from yourself and Victor, which is around 50 people, including your sons, daughters, grandsons, grandsons, and somehow none of them, I understand, will be continuing this kind of
well, because I think
work.
No, it's sad. It's sad, really. But I mean, the period that we worked from the beginning with the Russians is a unique period. It will never, ever, ever, well, I hope not, happen again. And it just was a time when we were there and we were keen, ready and expert, I think, enough.
But when you just name these people, like Ostrov, Ravinsky, Richter, Grigorovich, Vasiliev, Ulanova, Lisetsskaya, you knew all that culture, and what a great names indeed. And also, of course, Boulez and Nureyev.
Yes.
And you do something with Barenboim?
Oh, yes. I went to concert last week to hear Barenboim play with Marta Argerich. And he got very emotional when he saw me as well, because we presented Barenboim when he was 14.
14?
14, yes. And over the years as well, I worked with Barenboim a lot. I worked with Barenboim a lot.
14, he was like just this talented boy.
Yeah,
and
he
you
was
already
13.
knew.
Yeah. No, he's phenomenal. He is phenomenal. Barenboim, absolutely phenomenal. And now, and Barenboim and Menuhin, Yehudi Menuhin, we work very closely with Menuhin. We work very closely with the British Amadeus Quartet and the American orchestras we brought.
Did you also establish this kind of friendship with Menuhin, the way you, personal friendship with Menuhin, the way you did?
Not as close as the Russians. I mean, no, not as close. I think the Russians have permeated in our lives, have meant a lot, more than anyone else, I would say, you know, definitely. I don't know.
I'm very pleased to hear it. Thank you very much.
They're very special.
Thank you very much, Lilian.
Thank you.
Спасибо большое.